Is the court book with you, ma'am? The court book? With Mr. Rousseau. Okay. Thank you, Advocate Caesar.
The date is the 4th of March 2022, case number Regional Court 446 of 2020, State versus Malema, Julius Malema and Gerardo Sneeman. The parties are the same as yesterday. This matter is partly heard. The witness is still under cross-examination.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Worship, for yesterday adjourning early and this morning. I apologize for starting late. The respective experts were looking at the exhibits. So it's taken some time, but I believe it will save time, Worship. So thank you for your involvement in that report.
Just before you proceed, Advocate, I wonder, can I just move this one because it's leaving me no space to write? This one, ma'am, can I just move it here? Please. The witness, you are reminded that you are still under oath in this matter. Thank you, and that cross-examination will then proceed by Advocate.
Thank you. Colonel, let me thank you firstly for allowing us yesterday to peruse the file and for giving us access to the exhibits and the file this morning as well. It's appreciated. Thank you. And I want to go back to your reports. And if you look at even your very first report, Colonel, you will see that in paragraph 2.5.2, you say there that you attended a conference related inter alia to the potential for errors in cartridge case identification. Is that correct? It's your paragraph 2.5.2.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Are you aware of cases where there have been errors in cartridge case identification?
Your Worship, I am not aware of a specific case. I can't recall a specific case right now.
Then your next subparagraph here deals with magazine marks and their meaning. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So what you're saying here is that the magazine also causes damage or marks on the cartridge. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Am I then correct to infer that if no magazine is used, there will be no damage from a magazine? There will be a telltale sign that there was no magazine.
If a magazine is not present, then there will be no marks that are usually left by the magazine.
Now, in this instance, on this cartridge that was found at the stadium, were there any magazine marks?
Your Worship, the magazine marks have no much bearing in our examination. Therefore, there was no need for me to ensure if there are magazine marks or there are no magazine marks.
You haven't answered the question, so I'm going to rephrase. Were you told in this matter that we were dealing with a case where no magazine had been used?
No, Your Worship.
Had you been told that this was an instance where no magazine was used, would you have looked at the cartridge to exclude that possibility by looking for magazine marks?
Your Worship, as I have already mentioned, magazine marks have no meaning to us. Therefore, there is no need for me to look for magazine marks when I'm doing my examinations.
Colonel, would I be correct in inferring, because you haven't answered this question, that you did not look for magazine marks in this case?
I did not look for magazine marks, Your Worship, in this case.
Now, if you turn the page to paragraph 3, you record there that you received this spent cartridge and you marked it. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And you say here, the intention, in paragraph 4, the intention and scope of this forensic examination comprise the following ballistics techniques. 4.1, the examination and identification of the fired cartridge case. Is that right?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And then in paragraph 5, after doing your examination and identification, say that I examined the cartridge case mentioned in 3.1 and found, sub 1, the cartridge case mentioned in 3.1 is of 2.23 Remington caliber and was manufactured or designed to be fired by a center fire firearm. Is that correct?
No, Your Worship, it's not 2.23. It's 0.223 Remington.
I said 0.223.
No, sir, you said 2.23.
You recorded as 0.223 Remington caliber. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
5.2, I also found an ejector mark as well. It should be as an ejection port mark on the cartridge case mentioned in 3.1, which are consistent with marks produced by a semi-automatic and or full automatic assault rifle. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So you saw that this actual cartridge had an ejector mark and an ejection port mark. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
You then explain that you determined this in paragraph 6 based on facts established by means of an examination process which require a knowledge and skill in forensic ballistics. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
When you testified, you went on to say that you also acquired this image on the ARBIS system. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Can you explain to the court what the ARBIS system is?
Your Worship, the IBIS system, IBIS stands for Integrated Ballistics Identification System. This is a database where all specimens in the form of fired cartridge cases and fired bullets, be it an exhibit that has been received from a crime scene or a test which I have fired with a particular firearm that I have received to test, we acquire the image
a little bit slower. I'm struggling to.
Yes. This is all known to you, but new to us, or to me, I should say. So, just when you a little bit slower. Can you just start where we interrupted you?
Sorry, Colonel. I know it's difficult and you can't see the worship screen because of the camera. So the ARBIS is the Integrated
Ballistics Identification System, Your Worship.
And just pause for a moment and now explain what it does. It's a database.
It's a database, Your Worship.
Yes. Where all specimens, be it an exhibit or a test that you had fired, you then acquire the image.
We acquire an image onto this database, Your Worship.
When you say acquire, what you mean is you actually put it into the database that can be compared to all the other exhibits of other cases. That's correct?
Yes, Your Worship. Can I qualify that? Your Worship, we will put the exhibit cartridge case into this system, and this system will take images of this fired cartridge case, and those images are kept in the database. and they are compared with other cases nationally.
And there was recently a case where they arrested suspects and they then used the arbor system to tie that case up with other cases. So you see if there have been other instances where it's involved, almost like a fingerprint. Would that be accurate?
Yes, Your Worship. What happens, the database itself, as it compares this image with all the images that have been put into this database, then once there is a similarity, for example, Your Worship, if it's an East London case, it's a similar, there's a similarity with a Polokwane case, then we physically compare the two. The system helps us as a tool. At the end of the day, we physically compare. So as a person sitting in Port Elizabeth doing the East London case, I will call Pretoria. Pretoria, please send me the exhibit of Polokwane case number so-and-so, so that I can physically confirm the hit. It's called a hit once the two are.
I just want to write. It's spoken a lot. So
also, I apologize.
No, did you explain it? Now that arbor system, do you know how many characteristics it examines to determine that there is in fact what I would call a match, but you say the terminology is a hit?
Your Worship, the IB system takes the head stamp of the cartridge case. Therefore, it takes the images of the breech face, the images of the firing pin, as well as the images of the ejector.
I know it's getting complicated, but you haven't answered the question. Do you know how many characteristics or features have to match for it to be regarded as a hit?
How many characteristics or features that should match? There is no standard figure, Your Worship, as to how many that should match.
Now, in this instance, once you had downloaded these images or this image onto the arbor system, there were no hits, to agree with me. It didn't match to any other cases.
So far, Your Worship. Remember, that system has, that database has millions of exhibits and tests that have been applied to it. Therefore, sometimes it can take years for a hit to come up.
So let me rephrase it and then give my call. Since August 2018 to date, which is yours, you have not had a hit on this exhibit on the arbor system?
No, Your Worship.
I know you agree there was no hit. I just need to get it clearly on record.
Not that I know of, Your Worship. Your Worship, can I also say something regarding the IBIS? IBIS is under a different subsection of the ballistics. It's a different subsection of the ballistic section. All I do at IBIS is to just acquire the images. Following up as to finding if there are hits or not, there are different people that do that job.
Fair enough. No, no, I appreciate that. If you would turn then, sir, to your second report that you marked second and third, so it's marked 2 and 3. Can you tell us why you marked it 2 and 3 when it's one report?
Your Worship, for this report to have been marked 2 and 3, two sets of exhibits were received at the same time.
One being the firearms and the other being the cartridges, is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship. That could be the reason. While I was busy working with the first set of exhibits, then another batch arrived. As a result, they ended up being 2 and 3, Your Worship.
Now, we consulted last night, and I ascertained that when these rifles were handed in, there was a request from the investigating officer for 5 rounds to be handed in with each firearm. Are you aware of it?
For 5 rounds.
5 rounds accompanied each and every one.
I am not aware of the request, Your Worship. However, cartridges came in with the firearms.
When I don't want to confuse things. I say something. When I say 5 rounds, it was 5 live rounds, unspent cartridges that accompanied each firearm when they were handed over.
As I indicated, Your Worship, I am not aware of a request for each firearm to have 5 rounds with it. Firearms arrived with some ammunition, Your Worship.
Where is that ammunition acknowledged?
It will be acknowledged in my report, Your Worship. Your Worship, with my report that is marked 2 and 3, paragraph 4.13.1, that is the start of the samples that I took out of the ammunition which I have received. Where I sampled the ammunition.
So when you're talking 4.13 of the cartridges, were those live rounds?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So you marked them before you fired them?
I was not going to fire them, Your Worship. We do not fire ammunition that comes with the exhibits unless we need to do a specific test and we do not have such ammunition in our stores.
So am I to understand that you never utilized those rounds?
In terms of firing them, no, Your Worship. I did not fire them.
Now, if you go back to your report where we were now, yesterday we dealt with paragraph 3.3, but on paragraph 4, and I know you weren't dead on this, I just want to explain the procedure. I'm not going to be repetitive and I'll give you the opportunity to verify. You will see, I would use 4.1 as an example, and it's a pattern that develops. in 4.4, you say on the 14th of August 2018, during the performance of my official duties, I started with the analysis of the exhibits mentioned in paragraph 3.2. Then you say 4.1, I opened sealed evidence bag with number PAR 0004 73034 and found sub 1. And you say the 5.56 by 45 millimeter caliber LEW stroke vector model R5 assault rifle with serial number C07117 without magazine. Sub 2, one opened evidence bag with number PAR 0001486184. Okay, so the point that I want to make from here, there are 2 points. Firstly, you will see, Colonel, all of these firearms arrived without magazines. Do you agree with me? And you can look at the others. I'm not trying to catch you. You'll see the pattern in 421, 431, 441, 451, 461, 471, 481, 491, 410, 411, 412. You'll find the words without magazines. Do you agree with me?
Yes, Your Worship.
So that's the first point. And we don't have to go through all of them, but you're welcome to check as well. And you will see, Colonel, that in relation to every bag that you opened, there was already inside that bag, sealed in that bag, an opened evidence bag with the number recorded. You'll see it again in all 12 instances, and I invite you to check if you like. And I'll show it to you in your other statements as well. So you don't have to go through it every time, but get me.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Now the purpose of that, Colonel, is to keep the chain of custody intact. So in other words, an official policeman received the rifle, somewhere else possibly, had opened the bag, and after opening the bag, resealed the old bag with the rifle in the new bag. Do you agree with me, Steve?
That is the standard procedure of the detectives and LCRC, not ours, Your Worship.
You will see that as I put you, and you can please, I don't want to mislead you, and I wouldn't mislead the court. It goes up to number 12, 4.12.2. You'll see it's the same in every, it's the same pattern you follow. You open a bag, in the bag there's a rifle without a magazine, and there's the previous forensic bag inside with it. You then, in 4.13, say that you open sealed evidence bag with number PA 5000756521 and found 2.223 Remington caliber cartridges marked by you, and then you do that with all the other cartridges. Do you agree with me? In the subsequent paragraphs. Do you agree?
That's correct, Your Worship.
You then look at these items. You say there in paragraph 6. You say the intention and scope of this forensic examination comprises of the following ballistics techniques. 1. The examination and identification of ammunition. 2. Microscopic individualization of fired cartridge cases. 3. Firearm mechanism examination. You agree with me?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And in paragraph 7, you say, I examined the cartridges mentioned in paragraph 4 and found the cartridges were manufactured or designed to be fired by center fire firearm. You agree with that?
That's correct, Your Worship.
You also, in paragraph 7, I examined the cartridge mentioned in 413.1, marked 282270-18C23B, and found it consists of a primer, cartridge case, bullet, and propellant. Agreed?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And you then say, I examined and tested the assault rifles mentioned in paragraph 4 and found 1. The assault rifles mentioned in paragraph 4 function normally without any obvious defects, correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
2. Ammunition used for test purposes was marked as, and you've got all your markings there, is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And you explained that they were fired in those respective firearms. Agreed.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Right. For completion's sake, you then examined and tested the mechanisms of the other assault rifles and found them to be self-loading but not capable of discharging more than one shot with a single depression of the trigger. And you found that the devices were manufactured and designed to discharge center-fire ammunition. Agreed.
That's correct, Your Worship.
So they would satisfy the requirements of a semi-automatic firearm. Do you agree with me?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Then you say, I examined the cartridge cases mentioned in 5.1 and 9.2, compared the individual and class characteristic markings transferred to them by firearm components during the firing process using a comparison microscope and found the cartridge case mentioned in 5.1 was not fired in any of these firearms. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
In 12, you say the conclusions arrived at were based on facts established by means of an examination and process which require a knowledge and skill in forensic ballistics. Agreed.
That's correct, Your Worship.
In 13, you explain what you did with the different exhibits and how they were sealed. And in 13.4, you say, on 2018/08/24, the exhibits and tests mentioned in 5.1 and 9.2 marked 282270/18A1, 117TC1, and it continues with a series of numbers were sealed in evidence bag with number PA 60601560 and filed in case file with lab 282270/18. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
What do you mean when you refer to the word tests over there?
What do I mean when I refer to the word tests?
Tests. Yes, tests. What tests?
The ones that are marked with a ending with TC1 to TC2 or TC1 to TC4. Those are the tests that I fired using the rifles that I had examined, Your Worship.
So what, because this did cause confusion, so I needed to ask you, what you're referring to are test cartridges, not physical tests. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship, it's test cartridge cases, not cartridges, Your Worship.
Test
cartridge
cases or test spent cartridges, agreed.
I can accept the spent cartridges, Your Worship.
No, because we looked through your file with your consent yesterday, and there are no written tests or findings that are there. What you have are the cartridges, test cartridges, is that correct?
Your Worship, there are tests on each and every proforma that was examined.
So you say there's a written test?
It says tests, then it says 2 times 556 by 45, and the manufacturer is PMP, and the test was marked. I'm looking at an example one. And the test was marked 260 TC1 and 260 TC2.
100%. Then, out of fairness to you, we turn to the next of your reports. It was your 4th report, marked 4. And you'll see the same procedure was followed. You received the exhibits from Colonel Swartboy, and you then sent them to be examined for fingerprints by Warrant Officer Becker in paragraph 3.1. Do you agree with me?
Your Worship, I need to clarify something. These exhibits never left my office. I arranged with Warrant Officer Becker to come to my office and do the fingerprinting in my office. Every time I received.
Well, that doesn't...
With Warrant Officer Becker to do all the tests there. And that's where I interrupted. You confirm? Happy, Advocate Odion?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
And I had said to him that they were handed over, they were tested, and you'll see in 3.2, you then receive them back in different forensic bags. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And then at 3.3, you explain that on the 20th of August 2018, you handed over the new sealed evidence bags to AC Silangwe at the Forensic Laboratories reception for registration. They were registered in your presence and you received them back immediately after completion of the registration. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
We'll then see, Colonel, and please feel free to check, because you say then on that same day, 20 August 2018, you opened the new sealed evidence bags and found the following exhibits. And in each instance, you will find a firearm without a magazine with the opened previous evidence bag inside that forensic bag. You agree with me? Please feel free to check.
That's correct, Your Worship.
In other words, you'll see then, please, when Warrant Officer Becker examined the firearms for fingerprints, even at your unit, he resealed the bags with the firearms and the previous forensic bag inside them. Do you agree with me?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And again, I need to repeat, in every instance, the firearms did not have magazines. Every one of them. There are 14 here. Please feel free to check if you forgot.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Now, I'm told that in this instance, the same pattern was followed in that cartridges were handed in with these firearms as well. You marked those cartridges and didn't fire them. Is that the case?
Your Worship, with the second batch of firearms, I did not receive cartridges. With this batch of firearms, I did not receive cartridges.
I'm specifically instructed that in every instance, each firearm was handed over with 5 rounds. You say you didn't receive the rounds.
Yes, Your Worship.
We then compiled another report. It's your number 5. It's your 5th report. Is that correct?
It's correct, Your Worship.
And you'll see in paragraph 3, we explain that on the 27th of August 2018, we received evidence bags from Sergeant Makatali of the Detective Service, and there were sealed evidence bags that you then also sent to Warrant Officer Becker, who opened and resealed each one. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And once again, you will see that these firearms did not have magazines, and in each instance, the opened evidence bag that had been previously utilized was sealed in the new evidence bags. Do you agree with me? Please feel free to check.
That's correct, Your Worship.
So, to be more specific, this was the third batch of firearms that you received. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And I'm told, and I need to ask you, that in this instance too, each firearm was accompanied by 5 rounds. Did you receive those rounds? Did you acknowledge it in your report?
No, Your Worship, I did not receive any cartridges with this batch either.
Handwriting. And you'll see the crux of it in paragraph 3.
Hold on. Can I?
No, your file was taken away. It's 6, but it's in
Yes,
handwriting.
I've got 6 now.
Okay. And you explain here in paragraph 3 that on the 7th of November 2018, during the performance of your official duties, you received a request from Advocate Smith to give an opinion regarding the serial number which was found on the breech block of the rifle with serial number CNSPA 249-14, which is one of the rifles examined on 2018-08-29. Is that correct?
The serial number of the rifle that I received and a request to give an opinion is correct, Your Worship? Yes.
And you explained yesterday that you found that there might have been a shopping of what you referred to as a breech block. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
But then in paragraph 6, you say here, no photos or video or sound recordings were received at the Eastern Cape Ballistic Section, and therefore I cannot give opinion on that. Furthermore, even if I had received the sound/video recording, I would not be able to analyze it because we do not have sound analysis equipment and the training thereof. What were you referring to there?
Your Worship, there was a request to also analyze the photos and videos. These photos and videos were supposed to come with this firearm. Remember, Your Worship, the firearms, immediately after examination, they would be resealed and sent back. Even this particular firearm was sealed and sent back. And now, since there was this request, this new request regarding the number that had been found on the serial number, not much difference. Yes, it's more commonly referred to as a bolt carrier.
As a block?
Bolt carrier.
Your Worship.
And I know it's difficult, but when it's a breach, because I've made the mistake, so I speak from personal. It's not a breech block, it's a breach, like B-R-E-A-C-H. Is that correct?
B-R-E-E.
Double is breech block.
Breach.
Breech block, and that's more commonly referred to as a bolt carrier. And I'm further instructed that the bolt carrier is the item that holds the round or cartridge at the back. So it would only have an effect on the back of the cartridge. Would you have any comments on that?
On the head stem.
Yes, but the side of the head stem. Yes, when I say back, yes, thank you. So just for the court, so let me go slow and then I'll thank you. I'm going to clarify that. So at the head you have a projectile, at the back you have the head stamp. So at the back, it only has an impact on the back where the head stamp is. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if the bolt carrier is changed accidentally or for any purpose, it won't have any effect on the ejection port mark?
On the
Ejection port marks.
sometimes, Your Worship, you find that the ejection port mark has got some individuality that you can link. However, in terms of orientation, the ejection port mark, it won't have an effect because the cartridge will still be ejected the same way, even if it was a different bolt, carrier, or breech block.
If we can then turn to, there is no seventh report by you in the docket.
No, I don't.
So the next one is numbered 8, is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Did you compile a seventh report?
No, Your Worship.
So how did you skip from 6 to 8?
Your Worship, apparently the report number 8 should have been talking to number 7 as well. There is a case, since there was this request of the analysis of the CDs and videoing, then entry number 7 was registered. However, there were no exhibits at the time. Therefore, that entry had to be cancelled. So there was no examination on that particular entry. These numbers relate to entries every time exhibits arrive.
I'm understanding it for the first time, but you need to be more specific out of fairness to her worship. No, I'm understanding. So report number 6 referred to the bolt carrier and or breech block and CDs and photo or videos and audios. Those videos and audios weren't received, but in your report number 8, you deal with those videos and audios. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship. What happened was, as indicated in report number 6, that no photos or videos were received. Therefore, entry number 7 ceased to exist because it would have accommodated the photos and videos. Then entry number 8, now the CDs were submitted. Then the case is registered again and it becomes entry number 8.
I'm understanding for the first time. So you say here in paragraph 3, on the 5th of April 2019, during the performance of your official duties, you received an intact sealed evidence bag with number PAD 0011862225, marked Dansani CAS 06/08/2018 from Case Administration of the Ballistic Section. You opened the bag and you found 2 evidence bags which contained 2 CDs plus another 2 CDs in one evidence bag and a CD and a photo album in the other evidence bag. Is that correct?
The first evidence bag, Your Worship, that I received contained 2 evidence bags. And one of these 2 evidence bags contained 2 CDs.
So,
and then the second evidence bag, which was also inside the main bag, contained a CD and photo album.
in other words, they had sealed the previous evidence bags with these CDs and photo album in the evidence bags that you received. Is that correct?
In the main big evidence bag that I had received. That's correct, Your Worship.
And that was despite you saying that you don't have the expertise, I beg your pardon, training and equipment to analyze these items. And that's what leads to your conclusion in paragraph 6 hereof, where you say, after examination of the still photos in the CDs and photo album, the following conclusions were made. I could not determine the identity of the person the object was carrying in CDs, photos mentioned, and photo album mentioned in the respective paragraphs. Then you say no video footage and or sound or audio analysis was performed on CDs mentioned in those respective paragraphs, as I'm not trained in video footage and audio analysis. Is that correct?
Correct, Your Worship.
And then you reseal them and send them back. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
You then turn to your 9th test. And here you explain, in paragraph 3, that on the 13th of December 2019, during the performance of your official duties, you received a request from Advocate E. Smith of Eastern Cape DPP to conduct further tests to establish the ejection range and muzzle flash using the firearm with serial number CN-SPA 249-14. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And then you explain that you received the rifle as well in a sealed evidence bag. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
That you opened it, and then you say in paragraph 5, the intention and scope of this forensic examination comprises the following ballistics techniques. 1. Projectile trajectory examination. 2. Crime scene examination, reconstruction, and scene photography. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So, am I correct in assuming that the intention of the tests that we watched on the videos yesterday was to reconstruct the scene to examine how that firearm would fire, or had been fired if it was the one that was fired? Is that correct?
Your Worship, reconstruct, I might have a different understanding of it, in the sense that I might understand it as redoing something that was already there. This is our standard procedure in terms of our scope, that we do crime scene reconstruction and scene photography, but here we were not necessarily having a particular crime scene to reconstruct. No, Your Worship.
Now, when we're in agreement, we can say there was no reconstruction. You're with me.
No, Your Worship.
I'm just noticing the time. I just want to hear from court staff. No, I didn't allow for a tea adjournment. So I'm not sure if anyone needs a bathroom break or if they've been in court since appropriate.
Listen, I think it's only fair to take a short break. I know exactly where I am.
I've also marked where we are, so it shouldn't be a problem. It's 12:30. Shall we be ready to return by 11:45?
Resolution, please.
Just leave everything here. It's too heavy to carry up and down. Thank you very much. On record? Ready? Ready. Okay. I see we're on record. The witness, you are reminded that you are still under oath in this matter and that cross-examination will continue.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Colonel, we were on your ninth report, which dealt with the range and the flesh, the muzzle flesh. You'll see there in paragraph 5, you say the intention and scope of this forensic examination comprise of the following ballistic techniques. 1, projectile trajectory examination. 2, crime scene examination, reconstruction and scene photography. We were on that, and you said it wasn't a reconstruction in the true sense. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Then you conducted your tests, and in paragraph 8, you say, after conducting the ejection range tests, I determined that the firearm mentioned in 411 ejected fire to cartridge cases to an average distance of 2.5 meters to the right, and that average distance of 1.2 meters to the back, excuse me, to the back of the shooter. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Now, when you speak of an average distance here, you took a number of shots and you worked out the mean distance of those shots. Is that correct?
Your Worship, that is what we did. And we took measurements from different cartridge cases. And yes, Your Worship.
Do you have records of those measurements?
No, Your Worship, not here in this one, Your Worship.
Because when we looked, we didn't see any records, but of 23 meters. You agree with me?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Because the warrant officer Becker, who testified before you and is the person who conducted a number of the tests in this case, did an estimation based on the facts that were given to him of the distance from where the shooter was alleged to have been standing to where the round was alleged to have been found, and calculated approximately 23 meters. You're an expert in scientific issues. I don't believe that there is a firearm that ejects a distance of 23 meters. Do you?
Your Worship, as I already indicated, that I haven't done much tests regarding how far the firearms eject. So I would not say as an expert that that is the case.
It's a fair enough answer, but you never recorded any distance of the ejection range that came anywhere near 23 meters. Do you agree with me?
Can you repeat it?
You never recorded any distance of the ejection range that came anywhere near 23 meters. Do you agree with me?
No, Your Worship.
When you say no, you do agree.
I did not record such.
Thank you. Now, another issue, and that's why reconstruction is so important, is when one tries to put up the permanent structures that would have been on the scene. Do you agree with me? So when you reconstruct, you try to recreate the permanent structures. Do you agree with me?
I agree, Your Worship.
Now, if there were material items around the shooter, first of all, do you agree that the cartridge wouldn't travel through or penetrate canvas cloth once it's being ejected?
It would not, Your Worship.
Do you also agree that if a shot was fired underneath a canvas cover and a projectile was emitted, there would be damage in the canvas?
If, Your Worship, a shot is fired
and there's a projectile
underneath something, and it's a live cartridge that is fired, then the property above where the shot is discharged, or even if it's shot straight in front, should have some damage.
Now, in your final intent report, go to paragraph 3, and you say here, on the 8th of June 2020, during the performance of your official duties, you received a request from Advocate Matthews, the Defense Counsel, to supply them with a statement setting out how you arrived at the conclusion that the fired exhibit cartridge received on 3 August 2018, marked 282270-18A1, was fired in the firearm serial number CN-SPA 24914. You confirm that?
Yes, Your Worship.
You say there, the intention and scope of this forensic examination comprises of the following ballistics techniques. 1, microscopic individualization of fired cartridge cases. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And you say there in paragraph 5, on the 23rd of August 2018, so in other words, it was a test that had already been conducted almost 2 years previously. The cartridge case mentioned in paragraph 3 was compared with tests that were fired using the firearms received on 18 August 2018, which the firearm with serial CN-SPA 24914 was amongst them, using a comparison microscope onto which the exhibit cartridge case was placed on one side and the different tests on the other side, and all the marks were viewed simultaneously. You confirm so far?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And you then say, class and individual characteristics were observed and identification was made in different areas of the neck of both the exhibit cartridge case and the tests fired in firearm number CN-SPA 24914 with the exclusion of the tests from other firearms. The results were confirmed by another senior analyst. You confirm that?
That's correct, Your Worship.
In 6, you say the conclusions arrived at were based on facts established by means of an examination and process which require a knowledge and skill in forensic ballistics. You confirm that?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And then this is signed off on the 15th of June 2020. Now, I need to put certain things to you in the analysis of this report. Firstly, would you agree with the statement that a forensic scientist should always be able to describe the essential steps of a scientific method when tests are conducted?
Can you please...
With pleasure. The first statement is a forensic scientist should always be able to describe the essential steps of a scientific method when tests are conducted.
That's correct, Your Worship.
I also put you, there is a set format to keep examiners objective so that tests are not conducted in order to prove a certain aspect, but rather an experiment where the results are objectively recorded and can be verified by any other examiner at a later stage. Do you agree with that? I'll repeat it because it was long. I'll be slow. I apologize. What I said was, I have it typed in front of me so it's easier. There is a set format to keep examiners objective so that tests are not conducted in order to prove a certain aspect, but rather an experiment where the results are objectively recorded and can be verified by any other examiner at a later stage. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Your Worship.
As I'm instructed, because I didn't know this before, And you've given similar evidence, but I just want to be specific on it. When examining cartridge cases, there are 5 surfaces that can be examined. The first one is the firing pin impression, which is in the center and back of the cartridge case. Do you agree?
That's correct, Your Worship.
That's right.
But that depends on the type of a firearm, Your Worship.
The second is what's referred to as breech face marks, which are at the back surface of the cartridge case. Do you agree?
That's correct, Your Worship.
The third is referred to as extractor marks, which are on the rim of the cartridge case. Do you agree with that?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Just waiting for those that are writing. The fourth are referred to as ejector marks, as opposed to extractor marks. This is ejector marks on the breech face area of the cartridge case. Do you agree with that?
That's correct.
It's near the top.
That more or less looks like a bottle.
Right, so let's stop.
Just a minute. Also, the camera is blocking my view. I can't see what you're holding in your hand. Let me just go close. Sorry?
With this cartridge, Your Worship,
No, you need to explain. You shouldn't see the bottleneck.
This cartridge is called a bottleneck type of a cartridge case because the neck area goes inwards and like a bottle. So that's why it's called a bottleneck type of cartridge.
So now, what you're saying when it goes in, because we're being recorded, is it narrows at the top, like a bottleneck?
Yes, it goes in and narrows. But if it was straight and going inwards, that would be a different type. But this one goes in and then it goes straight again.
You were going to say something else, sorry, I stopped you.
Then there is an area that is regarded as a shoulder as it goes in, a shoulder area, and then there is an area that is the one that is going straight again. That is regarded as a neck area, Your Worship.
Again, the camera. So just point to the shoulder
As
area.
it is going inwards, Your Worship,
Yes.
that is regarded as a shoulder, and then it straightens up again. Then it is regarded as a neck area, Your Worship.
The top part that I'm seeing there.
Yes,
No, Your Worship, the top of that is
The neck.
This part one, it's just a bullet, Your Worship.
that's a live Your Worship. So the
Yes.
neck stops before the copper begins.
That's what I'm. Yes. Okay. There we go. Sure.
You were required to examine other surfaces or areas to establish whether they matched. Do you agree with me?
Yes, Your Worship.
In this case, all the other surfaces didn't provide a positive match. Do you agree with me?
Your Worship, with the ejector and the extractor, it does not necessarily always mean a fired cartridge case was fired in a particular firearm. It could have been cycled through a firearm. When you cycle a firearm, where you had a round in the chamber, and then you cock it open, that round is going to be ejected. Therefore, you might find the ejector as well as the extractor mark, because the extractor claw, as it is sitting in the chamber, the extractor claw is also hooked on the rim of this particular cartridge. So these two type of marks do not always necessarily mean that the cartridge case was fired in a particular
Ronald, you haven't answered the question, but I'm going to add to this and we'll come back. Not only the ejector and extractor marks would appear, even though a round hasn't been found, the magazine mark is the same. That you can put it in and out of the magazine without firing. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree.
But now I'm going to ask you the same question again. You did not find positive matches on any other surfaces. Do you agree with me?
On any other
surfaces?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And you only compared one test round from that rifle
that I received. I just need to quickly check the second batch which I received. In the second batch, Your Worship, I received 14 firearms. And after firing tests using all the 14 firearms, I compared all the tests, not a specific test. In other words, Your Worship, with this firearm that was positive, I fired 4 tests and all 4 of them were positive. However, I only needed 1 to make a photograph, not all 4 of them.
But Colonel, the question was, in the photograph that you referred to, you only utilized 1 round. It's referred to as 249 TC3. Do you agree with me? In the photograph that you referred to.
In the photograph that I referred to, yes, I used 1 cartridge to take the photograph.
I don't know why you're referring to all of this. I said in the photographs that you referred to, you only utilized 1 in the very same test round being 249 TC3. Do you agree? It's as simple as that.
No, Your Worship, I do not agree. The first question was, I used only 1 test to compare with the exhibit.
Colonel, the record can be replayed. I said to you, in the photographs that you referred to, is how I premised the question.
Yes, I used
and then
1 test.
And I'll ask you differently. Do you have photographs of the other rounds besides 249 TC3 in comparison to the test round?
No, Your Worship.
Thank you. Now, you as an expert were obliged as well to record the negative findings. In other words, where it didn't match. Do you agree with me?
Yes, Your Worship.
Why does it not appear in any of your reports?
Your Worship, my docket was viewed, and in my second report, it is stated clear that the cartridge case, paragraph 11.1, the cartridge case mentioned in paragraph 5.1 was not fired in the firearms.
I'm talking about the exhibit in question's other surfaces. You didn't find a match on any other surfaces that does not appear in any of your reports. Do you agree with me?
In any other surface, in any other tests or
Any other
surfaces of the same test of the firearm? No, Your Worship. As I indicated earlier, I found that the breech face and the firing pin marks of that particular firearm were negative with the actual exhibit. But as a standard procedure, we check all the different areas, and I found in the chamber, which is part of the neck area, that the cartridge case was indeed fired in that firearm.
You never recorded all the negative findings. Do you agree with me?
Your Worship, we need only a specific mark that we use in order to identify a firearm. In that case, despite the fact that these areas showed a negative mark, but as I was continuing with my examination, then I found an area that showed a positive mark.
Advocate Otis, may I address all right, the witness? The court, and I'm sure the others, fully understand what you are explaining, but the question in short and in essence is, there's no way that you captured the negative marks found, and that requires a confirmation or denial.
No, Your Worship. There is nowhere where I captured the negative
Is
marks.
that what you wanted to
Yes,
know,
yes.
Advocate Otis? Thank you, sir.
My argument, and I'm giving you an opportunity now, Colonel, is that you weren't objective, because an objective witness deals with all that which supports their theory and all that goes against their theory, so it can be objectively assessed by other experts. Do you have any comments?
Your Worship, my examination was objective at all times, because not that I only used another senior analyst to confirm the results, but I used two of other analysts.
Colonel, that doesn't make the test objective. If somebody says something, two other people confirm, but it doesn't make it objective. But that's argument. Let me put to you, Colonel, your report doesn't even name who confirmed your findings. Do you agree with me?
I agree, Your Worship. However, as my docket was viewed yesterday, the worksheets did show the two other analysts, and they were seen.
Colonel, your docket wasn't made available until you made a call. I'm talking about your report, not your docket. Your report does not identify the person, because you only do it in the singular, who you claim confirmed your findings. Do you agree with me?
Yes, Your Worship.
So that can never serve as some form of objectivity. Just to say another senior employee in the same department agrees with me doesn't make it objective. Do you agree with me?
I do not agree, Your Worship.
I want to take it one or two steps further. At your ballistic laboratory, you have access to very sophisticated equipment. Is that correct?
I would not understand by means of sophisticated equipment, Your Worship.
Well, you are trained in and have access to microscopic equipment. Do you agree with me?
Microscopic equipment, yes, we have access to it, Your Worship.
And you utilized that equipment to analyze these rounds. Do you agree?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Now I want to put to you that the two defense experts looked at the rounds and picked up a very clear and obvious identification mark on the neck of the exhibit, in the case referred to in the report as A1, and several other of the rounds. Do you have any comment? And I need to point out, that was just looking with their eyes and magnifying glass.
I don't agree, Your Worship. You will not be able to make an identification just using a magnifying glass.
That saw something that was so obvious that you didn't even point out. So, do you have any comment?
Okay. Can I repeat the question?
They saw something that was so obvious, even with their naked eyes. Do you have any comment?
They saw something with the naked eye that
Yes.
was so obvious.
Yes.
I don't know if it's a question or just put to the witness, but it's very vague. I mean, if my director could make and have more clarity, did it match what they've seen or not? I mean, it's very vague what's put to the
I think
witness.
that for Kadoris was clear. He said, I will put to you, so I assume that's a statement. But I also would like to know what cartridge you are referring to, if it's the one in dispute or because you were saying rounds. So I wasn't sure.
No, I'll be absolutely specific with the mark and what they saw, so then it should solve the problem. What they noticed was a ring on the shoulder, a very clear ring on the shoulder. That's what I asked you about, so next to the neck of the actual exhibit in this matter. Have you noticed it?
I noticed, Your Worship, but that is not an identifier, an eye mark that is used in ID. Your Worship, 5 firearms that I examined, I noticed that they had consecutive serial numbers. 4 or 5. It's 245, 246, 247, 248, 249. Though that is an indication to me that those firearms were consecutively manufactured. And therefore, Your Worship, they will bear the same class characteristics, but not the individual characteristics. And to make an identification, I don't only look at class characteristics, I also look at individual characteristics, which will individualize that particular firearm.
Colonel, I thank you for that. Can you tell us in your report where you list any class categories of features, characteristics, any characteristics in your report?
Your Worship, by virtue of just identifying the class characteristics of a cartridge, identifying a cartridge as a 223 Remington or a 5.56 by 45 millimeter caliber. That is a class characteristic on its own.
Yeah. You see, this is my point. You say to the court, I'm an expert, I've identified these were fired in the same firearm. Is that correct? That's what you're telling the court. Do you agree with me?
No, Your Worship. I've identified one fired cartridge case to have been fired in a specific firearm. And my understanding of these means more than one.
Now, the difficulty I have is in that way you don't explain or number what characteristics you utilized to come to that conclusion. Do you understand what I'm putting to you?
Your Worship, as I already indicated, the case was viewed and my worksheet was seen, indicating that the neck and chamber marks were the ones where the identification was made. And one of my reports also indicates such.
We're not aligned in our question and answer, so let me ask this differently. Nowhere in your report do you say, I found 5 or 6 or 7 identical marks. You don't give a number, do you agree with me?
No, Your Worship. There is no procedure for us to give a number.
Now, we disagree on that, but I'll leave that for argument. The point I'm making is when the court deals with fingerprints, by way of example, there are certain minimum features that have to be identical before the court can accept that it's the same fingerprint. Do you understand that?
I have never worked with fingerprints.
I'm not asking if you don't, tell you as a fact. If I was lying to you, the court would stop you. Would stop me. I know you sent it out for fingerprints. But you have certain functions that cannot be taken away from the court. So if I use fingerprints as an example, a fingerprint expert will say, I looked under a microscope and I found 8 identical features in the fingerprint. But they'll number the features. Do you understand what I'm saying to you so far?
I understand, Your Worship.
But the point is that that expert must then come to court and show the court, have a look here, have a look there, have a look there, and you'll see it's exactly the same.
Your Worship, I did prepare court charts where I showed different areas around the neck.
You were never questioned on them. You never sat before the court or stood before the court and said, here are 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 or 15 identification marks. Please have a look at how they are exactly the same. Do you agree with me?
On this court?
Yes.
No, I haven't.
That's my point. So in effect, you're telling the court, I've seen this, accept what I'm saying. And all the experts, which is usurping the function of the court. If a handwriting expert comes to court and says, this is this man's signature, he has to point out why he says so. He can't just say, I'm satisfied that it's the case, then the court accepts it. Do you understand the principle?
Your Worship, as I indicated, I had prepared court charts and I had handed them over to the investigating officer. I was under the impression that the court charts are available in this court.
We not allowed to get again. I'll leave it for. A further factor is that any such comparison would have to show both the areas of resemblance and the areas of difference. Do you agree with me? It's logical.
The areas of resemblance, yes, and the areas of
difference.
No, Your Worship. No, I don't agree, Your Worship.
And I put to you that if you don't take into account the areas of difference or the differences, then it can never be regarded as objective. It's got to be subjective. You're only looking to make something match, not looking at all the possibilities that it doesn't in fact match. What is your comments?
Your Worship, as I indicated, 2 other senior specialists checked these cartridge cases. These members were not informed as to where to look, what to look for. They were just given, and then they found the same thing.
That's pure hearsay. They're not here. We don't have their reports. We don't even know from your report who they are. It's like saying, the court must now agree with me because 2 other people also agreed with me. I'm not telling you who they are. It's not in my report. I'm not telling you how they agreed, where we disagreed. It's just accept I'm right because X and Y agree with me. That's what you're doing here. Do you appreciate that?
No, Your Worship. Since my worksheets have the names of these members, then this court can subpoena them.
Your worksheets are not before the court. I had to ask you permission to see them. You had to phone your commander to give us access to it. Had I not done so, we would never ever know that there was that anything had been verified or checked. And there are no workings from your colleagues in your file to agree with me.
No workings of my colleagues. They are, Your Worship, in my file.
These questions have been asked and answered. I don't know how many times the witness have answered the same question.
I'll move on. When you test for muzzle flash, do you agree that the type of ammunition used will have a bearing on your findings?
Your Worship, as I indicated, that the muzzle flash experiment that I conducted, I did not conduct it for the purpose of me still analyzing it. I was merely requested to just conduct the test. I was informed that somebody else was going to be acquired to do the analysis of such.
I don't understand your answer because I asked you a question and you haven't answered. Do you agree that the type of ammunition will have an impact on the reaction on the muzzle flash?
Once again, Your Worship, as I indicated already, I conducted the muzzle test, not for the purpose of analysis.
So what was the purpose of the test?
It was just for somebody else. For me, it was me as a facility used to conduct the test because we've got the facilities, Your Worship.
But even so, Colonel, please, it's basic. If I use a stronger round, it's going to have more muzzle flash than a different manufacturer that has less explosive material in it.
The charge, Your Worship, in the cartridge has the bearing on the muzzle flash.
And therefore, it's important to record in the report what type of ammunition is utilized. Do you agree with me?
No, Your Worship, there was no such request that I must record this. All that I had to do was just to shoot.
So is it your evidence, because I'm understanding it now, possibly for the first time, that you were required to video the muzzle flash. That was it, and somebody else was then going to analyze it and work it out. Is that your evidence?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Put you then, so we don't have any such further report. Are you aware of any such further report?
No, Your Worship.
I want to put you that even if that was the case, it was pertinent for you to have to record what ammunition was utilized. So that the person that's now analyzing says, well, this is what happens with PMP. If I use Narinka, it's going to be different, or even to do a comparative between the different types of ammunition.
Your Worship, I did not see that as a necessity that I had to record the ammunition. However, our standard ammunition that we use is just a normal PMP.
Yeah. Your expertise relates to the forensics of relating to ballistics and firearms, not the law relating to firearms. Do you agree with me?
I don't know if there is a question.
There's a question. I can rephrase it in case you didn't understand. The role that you play as a scientific expert to look at the forensics of ballistics as opposed to a DFO who looks at the law and compliance relating to firearms. Do you agree with me?
Yes, Your Worship. Your Worship, my responsibility is to do the analysis and examination, not to interpret any laws.
I'm almost finished. You were asked by the prosecutor about the sound of the firearm, and you said, as we saw in the video, you can't comment because you wear earmuffs when you shoot. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Advocate Matthews.
Sorry, it looks like we've been tag teamed now. But I want to concentrate on the firearm 249-14 and the cartridge case mark A1. You don't even need to look at your reports. I understand from your evidence that, and your reply to my request for further particulars, that your identification of this cartridge case and the link to the firearm are the neck mark. Correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
As we have heard, the breech face marks, firing pin mark, other chamber marks, extractor, ejector, and the ejector port mark were all negative.
That's not correct, Your Worship.
What was positive?
I said, Your Worship, I noticed that the breech face and the firing pin marks were negative.
Yeah,
The neck is part of the chamber, Your Worship.
understand.
Yes. So if I said the identification was made on the neck, that means it was made on the chain as well.
Okay. Well, using American type of analysis, the neck marks on our scene is a mark on their own, are they not? Did you not attend the FBI course?
Not for this specific.
All right. The extractor and the ejector you didn't find positive. Correct.
Your Worship, I have indicated that the ejector and the strap, then the extractor marks, do not always necessarily mean that a firearm
I heard that.
is fired. A particular cartridge case is fired in a particular
I
firearm.
heard you say that.
Yes.
But you haven't indicated on your report that it's positive. Simple
No,
as that.
no, Your Worship.
The ejector port mark.
The
My
ejector,
learned friend asked you about the ejector port mark, and you didn't completely answer the question. What about the ejector port mark?
the ejector port mark, Your Worship, was used for orientation.
I've heard you say that. Did you find that the ejector port mark was positive or negative with this fire?
I could not determine whether it was positive or negative in the ejector port mark, Your Worship.
Why not? Why not?
There were not enough individuality within the mark itself for me to determine if it was positive or negative, Your Worship.
When you received your first report, when you first received the cartridge case, let's call it the disputed cartridge case, you immediately made a note on your report that you can observe 2 marks. Is that correct? You said this is A16. You said, I also found an ejector mark as well as an ejection port mark on the cartridge case. Correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And I can tell you that just from the naked eye, we can also see the ejection port mark on this cartridge case. It is very prominent.
That's correct, Your
You
Worship.
agree with me? All right. Now, you then went, as I understand, and you tested all the firearms belonging to this company that could have fired this cartridge case. Correct?
Your Worship, I don't know where the firearm, who they belong to. The procedure, the standard procedure with us is simple. The case is brought to us in a sealed evidence bag with a covering letter accompanying it, and then we just analyze.
Well, sorry, what I should have put to you was, you analyzed all the firearms that were brought to you that could fire this cartridge case, correct?
I analyzed all the firearms that were brought to me.
In other words, you fired test cartridge cases of all the firearms, and you compared those test fire cartridge cases to
The exhibit.
the exhibit. Now, if I understand your theory about the firing pin and the breech face being negative, is because maybe the parts got changed between the firearms, whether purposely or inadvertently, correct? That's what you said?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Well, now tell me, did you find a firearm, because you've tested them all now, which had the breech face marks and the firing pin mark?
Just repeat, Advocate Matthews. Did you
Did
find?
you, when you were testing these other firearms, find one which was giving markings similar to the breech face and the firing pin?
Your question is incomplete.
You don't understand. Maybe I don't myself, but anyway, let me do this. You tested all the firearms that could fire this cartridge case.
That's
All right.
correct.
First of all, got it.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Your excuse or your theory about why these other marks are not found with this specific firearm is because the parts might have been changed inadvertently when they were cleaning it or whatever. Remember you told us this long story how the parts are interchangeable.
That's correct, Your Worship.
All right. So, now when you were testing these other firearms, if the parts have been changed now, then you would have picked up, would you have not, that these other firearms suddenly have a firing pin
And
or a breech face, which is connected to this cartridge case.
now you've completed the question. Yes, Your Worship, but I did not pick up in any of the firearms any positive links to this particular cartridge case on either the breech face and the firing pin.
Or on any other surface.
On any other surface. Yes.
Exactly. No, I've brought the, what you call a breech face. This firearm is also known as AR-14, is it not? Common. AR-14.
This is a Norinco, yes, a copy of it.
No. What we're going to do is we'll take a photo of this for you, and then we can hand it to you to have a look at. The point I want to make to the Colonel is the following. Can you dismantle this firearm? Are you able to dismantle it and put it back together?
I am able to take that breech block out of the firearm.
You call this a breech block. Is that good?
That's correct, Your Worship.
It's not really a breech block, is it? It's called a bolt carrier, not so.
Sorry, Your Worship.
You find something funny?
No, Your Worship.
No, I don't mind a bit of humor.
Sorry, Your Worship. I apologize. I humbly apologize, Your Worship. Your Worship, it's the terminology. It's a breech block. It's a bolt carrier. The bolt itself, it's a certain part of this firearm.
The point I want to make, Colonel, is the extractor, the ejector, and the breech face are all one solid piece. Is that not so? You can see. You want to look?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Mm-hmm. And then, if I push here, the firing pin comes out. Is that correct?
That's
That
correct.
also forms part of this front piece. Correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So, if this particular piece is interchangeable with another firearm, like it is, we accept it, what you say. One would put this into the other firearm, and when you fired a cartridge case, the firing pin, the extractor, the ejector would all make marks, and the breech face will all make marks on that particular cartridge case, correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And if I now take that test and I look through the comparison microscope at the two, and I see, but this is now exactly the same, but it's a different firearm, I would be able to say somebody swapped the parts around, because your neck marks are showing on firearm A, but these marks are showing on firearm B. Correct?
No, Your Worship. As I indicated earlier, Your Worship, that the standard procedure is check all the marks before you make a conclusion.
I've got another theory for you why your breech face, firing pin, extractor and injector and ejector port are not made positive. And that is because your analysis of the neck marks is wrong.
That's not correct, Your Worship.
Are you a member of AfT? AfT?
No, Your Worship.
You're not.
No, Your Worship.
This is the Association of Firearm and Tool Examiners. Is that not a worldwide organization?
I am aware of it, Your Worship. I was once invited to attend one of their conferences.
Yeah. You said so. And would you agree with me that the standards that they set for ballistic comparisons is accepted worldwide?
Your Worship, what I've noticed regarding their papers is exactly what I'm doing, in the sense that they do analysis and then they just record and write a paper on it. Then that analysis that has been done by a particular person is accepted worldwide as long as the same person, another person, anywhere else can come up with the same results.
It's subject to peer review in other words.
That's correct.
Throughout the world.
That's correct.
Right. And they set the standards or the minimum standards required before a forensic analyst can make a positive finding. You accept that?
For their organization, maybe.
For their organization. Because I know where your and my dispute lies here. You say that by finding neck marks at two different places, you interpret that to mean that you have found two separate characteristics which entitle you to make this certificate positive. Am I right?
Two different marks within the neck.
Yeah. Correct.
Correct.
That you think entitles you now to make this certificate positive. Correct. Whereas I'm going to put to you that unfortunately is completely wrong. Because what is required is not too similar. Somebody's tired of me talking. Not two similar marks from two similar places. What is required by AfT and the international standard is that you find something else positive, like the breech face or the firing pin or something else on that firearm before you can positively say that it is positive. You don't accept that?
No, Your Worship.
Do you see that where a dispute lies between my expert sitting in court, another one sitting at the back? We also got two like you had.
Your Worship, AfT is an American-based organization. It does not dictate us as to how in South Africa we should do our analysis. Our own standard procedures dictate us.
You realize what you just said? That you as the police in South Africa make your own standards as to whether you're going to decide something is positive or not, correct?
That's correct, Your Worship. However, I wanted to continue, Your Worship.
Yeah, you stopped.
Yes, I do. I needed to give time for the writing.
So carry on.
We also do a peer review of the work in the form of proficiency testing with other laboratories that are outside South Africa.
So give me the name of one. What laboratory outside of South Africa are you getting peer review? And I was not in Harare or
After the name, I think we should.
Your Worship, I am just going through my reports.
No.
One of my reports indicates the proficiency testing that I had done. The very first report by collaborative testing services, which is in Sterling, United States.
they did what?
A proficiency testing.
For you?
They compiled a test for us. They compile tests for us, then we do the test to check if we will get exactly the same results they have.
Not in this case.
Can we just stop there, please?
Sorry.
I indicated,
Thank you.
Advocate Matthews, it's 1:10. Are we going to adjourn, or what is the procedure or agreement for the rest of the afternoon?
Yes, if we can ascertain firstly how far, how long the council is still going to be, which then I can discuss it with the rest of the court staff.
I don't want to limit him to a certain time, because we know what one question you receive an answer and the answer leads to 10 others, so it's difficult for him to say how long he will be, and I don't want you to limit yourself, so it's up to you. Keep in mind there's also re-exam after this and also questions by court after this. I don't know if we will reach all of that today. Okay. If I may also suggest, so that everyone has a comfort break, I'm not sure, and you can consult your clients as well, Advocate Odes and Advocate Matthews. We can do it too, or we can start at 1:45. You may take instructions and then just inform me. You can do so now. May we go off record, please? We are off record.
Then we can finish earlier. It's okay.
Do you want to inquire from your clients?
You should 1:45.
I just need to hear from you.